everyone, and welcome to another Heart4PCOS interview. We are celebrating the 10th anniversary of Heart4PCOS, and I am extremely excited to be sitting down with our guest this afternoon, Ellison Clark. Ellison is a registered dietitian and expert in women's health. She works primarily with people with PCOS, fertility struggles, thyroid disorders, and prediabetes to help them balance their hormones, improve their fertility, and minimize their symptoms through her unique approach of root cause lab testing, gentle nutrition, and lifestyle recommendations, and customized supplement protocols. Ellison has helped hundreds reduce the risk of further disease development, improve their symptoms, and even get pregnant with PCOS. Ellison also has PCOS herself, going almost 2 decades before finally getting a formal diagnosis. This has fueled her mission and her passion to help others like her get the answers that they need and deserve so that they can live their happiest and healthiest life. Welcome, Ellison. So excited to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
I wanted to start off because not everyone knows your background story. So I would love you to talk a little bit about your journey with PCOS as a patient and a practitioner.
Sure. Yeah. And those actually overlap a little bit. So when I was in my very early teens, like so many with PCOS, started my period, as I was kind of tracking it, it wasn't normal. It wasn't coming regularly. It actually was very light and kind of came constantly, it felt like. And so I actually remember in my what really kind of grabbed my mom's attention when I told her this, I said, I feel like I'm having, my period all the time and not knowing anything about fertility or hormones. I said, and I'm really nervous that it's going to impact my ability to have kids one day. And sure enough, now knowing what I do and how, the fertility piece of PCOS is so frustrating, I feel like I was kind of onto something. But we went to the doctor. He told, myself and my mom, this is totally normal. We'll put you on birth control and don't worry about it. So naturally, we trusted him. And like I said, I went almost 2 decades on the pill, never really understanding anything about what was happening in my body, kind of behind the scenes, how the pill was impacting my hormones, nutrient stores, things like that. And then when I decided, you know what, I'm done with this, I want to figure out what's going on with my body, it was only then that after doing kind of some digging, figured out, I think this is what's going on. And actually, interestingly enough, kind of had to walk my doctor to the diagnosis of like, okay, so I have this and I have this. Would you agree that that means I have PCOS? And, I think so often what doctors miss a lot of times is that we're just looking for answers. That diagnosis is so powerful to, kind of take that next step forward in our health. And so just like so many others, I had to fight for that diagnosis so that I could understand what was going on. Fast forward a few years, I also went through some fertility struggles, but as I was just telling you, have a little 6-month-old. And so that is something that I like to, empower my clients with, that, just because we have this diagnosis of PCOS does not mean we can not have children. Not to say it's an easy journey, because I know a lot of times it's not, but it definitely is not the end all be all.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you said that, because I think that's, 2 things that kind of struck me. First of all, that you were put on birth control pills and you weren't given any other answers or reasons, just stick on it. And when you're ready to have kids, just come back and see me. I had the exact same thing happen to me. And they don't talk about the impact of after you come off of the pill and everything that goes along with that. And that's when the symptoms start, like, wow, here I am, you're PCOS. So
Yes.
That's really crazy. And the second really important message is that while infertility is prevalent in patients with PCOS, it is not impossible to get pregnant. And a lot of doctors who don't understand the syndrome, when you first go in and they say you have PCOS, they're like, well, you may not be able to have kids. That's not true. Like you said, it may be more difficult, but it doesn't hold true for every single person. So your specialty is in nutrition. So I wanted to chat about the concept of food as medicine and how proper nutrition can help optimize our health with PCOS.
Definitely. This is one of my favorite topics, because food is so powerful. It means so much to so many different people, but it really holds such a powerful key to our health. So not only, especially for those of us with PCOS, not only minimizing those symptoms, but just like we're talking about all month, really preventing some of those more severe chronic diseases that unfortunately we are at higher risk for developing with PCOS. You know, there's so many of kind of the hallmarks of PCOS that we're so used to seeing with high androgens, insulin resistance, dyslipidemia, all of those things can lead to heart disease. And while, you know, nutrition isn't the only way to treat those things, it can have a really powerful impact on all of that and can allow us to really feel in control of our health and of our future and kind of, you know, our health destiny, if you will, that, you know, a lot of times these things can it can kind of feel like we're doomed to develop these things. And so something that I'm very passionate about, and I know you are too, is making sure that people know that, you know, just because we are at risk does not guarantee that it's going to happen. And it does not mean that there's nothing that we can do about it. We really have a lot of power and say in that.
Yeah, I love that, you know, it's about empowering people and giving them the tools that they need to get better. So great philosophy. And I love the formula that you use with patients that includes root cause lab testing, general nutrition, and lifestyle recommendations. And wanted to break all those down a little bit. So first, what is root cause lab testing and why does it matter?
Yeah, so root cause lab testing is, you know, just what it sounds like. We are looking for the root cause of what is going on in our body. What exactly is it that is causing these symptoms? So often when we go to the doctors and we get some lab tests done, it might say, you know, we've got elevated estrogen or elevated androgens. And that's great to understand, but what is even more powerful is understanding why those hormones are high, why they're out of whack. And so if we can figure out what is going on in someone's body to understand why they're having these symptoms, in my opinion, we are able to come up with a much more sustainable treatment plan so that not only they can stick with it, but they can kind of go about their life and live it the way they want to, as opposed to, you know, constantly kind of, you know, playing the game of whack-a-mole and whacking, you know, all these PCOS symptoms that always want to pop up. It's like you feel like you get one under control and all of a sudden another one pops up. So it's really a way to, again, get at that root cause so that we can really move forward and make some progress in our health.
That's so important because I think a lot of times that's where providers could potentially miss the mark, is that they're looking at the symptoms individually as opposed to collectively and as a whole person. And like you said, when you're treating the root cause, then a lot of those symptoms will be alleviated because we're getting down to the nitty gritty of what's happening with you. So really
Exactly.
cool. So the next thing I wanted to know about is this gentle nutrition. What is gentle nutrition and what is the goal of practicing this with patients?
Yeah. So again, I think gentle nutrition is really, in my opinion, one of the best ways to practice sustainable good nutrition. So, as you know, and anybody who follows me on social media or has worked with me, my goal is to create a plan that is as sustainable as possible for a person. I'm never going to tell you, you need to follow this diet, you need to cut out these foods, whatever it is. And so, gentle nutrition, if you think of kind of a Venn diagram, and on one hand, we've got our nutrition knowledge, which the wonderful thing is, I think so many people with PCOS have so much nutrition knowledge because there's, you know, so much research that goes on. And then in the other circle, we think of kind of our food preferences, our food cultures, what we have access to, what is easiest for us to prepare for ourselves in our day-to-day lives. So it's kind of that practicality. And so gentle nutrition is bringing those two things together, that yes, we know that with insulin resistance, pairing proteins with our carbohydrates is really helpful. We know that getting plenty of fiber is really helpful, but how do we take that knowledge that we have and combine it with what we want to be eating, what our you know, our culture is typically eating, again, what we have time for and what we have access to. I think that's such a important thing that, so often influencers and even doctors can sometimes kind of throw out, super expensive supplements or foods, or, suggest a meal plan that takes you 6 hours on the weekend to prepare. And that's just not feasible for the majority of people, I think. So again, this gentle nutrition is how can we make the most of what we know is going to improve our symptoms and work in our life so that it is something we can do for the rest of our lives, because we know, unfortunately, there is no cure for PCOS. We're going to be doing this for the rest of our lives. So we need to make sure it's something that we can stick to for the most success.
Absolutely. And another really important point that you made is that you said PCOS is lifelong. A lot of websites, providers, organizations have listed on their information that PCOS is a condition of reproductive age women. Where does PCOS go after the reproductive years? It's still
Right.
with you, right? So I think it's really important that we recognize that it can start in girls as young as 8 years old and go post-menopause, because as young as I look, I am in menopause, and I can tell you that it still affects me pretty seriously. So on this topic of gentle nutrition, I hear a lot about intuitive eating. So why should we be intuitive eaters, and what can we learn by doing so?
So one of my favorite things about intuitive eating is really kind of getting in touch with our body and listening to what our body wants and needs. And I know that that can sound really kind of crazy and foreign to somebody who is not in the practice of doing that, especially when we're someone who might listen to a lot of diet culture. And we've heard that for, decades, and from some of the most impactful people in our lives, like our mothers, our grandmothers. And so intuitive eating really allows us to work towards pushing out kind of that diet mentality, all this, kind of junk around food and nutrition that we have learned, and allows us to start the process of unlearning all of that diet culture and learning what our body truly wants and needs. And so, gentle nutrition, like we just talked about, is a principle and a component of intuitive eating. So there's obviously other things that kind of come along with intuitive eating, but the most important thing I think that we can learn from intuitive eating is learning about our bodies, honestly. When
Yeah.
we really take a chance to kind of slow down and listen to our bodies, we kind of understand a lot of times, where those cravings are coming from. And so often what I hear from folks is like, I can't practice intuitive eating because all I would do is eat Doritos all day long, or chocolate chip cookies, or whatever it is. And the beauty of it is, we allow those foods. So we don't attach morality, good or bad, to any types of food. And when we do that, we allow ourselves to eat those foods that are maybe, say, less nutritionally dense, but also allow ourselves to say, like, wow, I'm really craving some broccoli today, or whatever it is. We view those foods as morally equal. And so we take that morality out, which I think is really powerful. And I think it can teach us a lot about ourselves and our body and our health.
Yeah, it absolutely can. And, when we do the restrictive dieting, especially with PCOS, it can lend itself to things like eating disorders, which there's a high prevalence of in the PCOS community because of, like you were saying, the diet culture, and, people trying to sell these plans. And it's a terrible way to live when all you want to do is get healthy in your body. So I'm glad you're changing perceptions about that. So along with nutrition, we know that lifestyle can play a major role in helping as far as things like sleep, exercise, stress reduction, and habits. So how does that all kind of contribute to somebody's overall success?
So we know that food and nutrition and what we're eating doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is impacted by these things like exercise, sleep, stress, our different lifestyle habits. And those things also impact, our food choices, and, what we're wanting to eat, what we're craving, all those good things. And so I think thinking about kind of that bucket of lifestyle changes, health promoting behaviors, whatever you want to call them, is so, so important because we can't only focus on food. One thing that I find really interesting, we know that as many as 95% of people with PCOS have insulin resistance. And what we also know is that there's about I think it's just over 40 contributing factors to our blood glucose level. And only about 20% of those contributing factors have to do with food and nutrition. And I think that's so important to remember. Some of those things we can control, like movement, stress, sleep, all those good things. But some of them, have to do with biology and our genetics and our environment that we're in. And we have a lot less control over them. So thinking about some of those other things that we can control and we can have an impact on in addition to food, I think is so important because it plays right into, what can make our PCOS symptoms the worst and what can also lead us down a path to chronic diseases later in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And, going off of this point that we were talking about, regarding emotional well-being with PCOS, a lot of patients receive judgment based on weight, some being told they're too heavy, just lose weight and not given the tools. And others are told you're too thin. There's no way you can have PCOS. Come back when you have some real problems. So can we talk a little bit about HAPS, or health at every size, and why it matters in a care plan?
Yes, I think it is so important because really at the heart, at the heart of HAES, or health at every size, is this idea of health equity. And I think when we think of folks on, different ends of the spectrum in terms of weight, that health equity really, it really isn't equitable, if you will. So there is a lot of, differences in how we're being treated. And I think at the root of that, if we really think about, questioning our doctors when they're saying something to a patient about just lose weight, asking them, okay, well, what would be your recommendation to me if, I did have a different BMI, my body was a different size or a different shape. What would you be telling me then? Because we know that losing weight alone isn't what is going to solve, cure, as some people will try to say, our PCOS. And people that exist in thin bodies also experience PCOS. They also experience the symptoms that come along with it. And they also deserve health and attention. And, like you said, I've heard that too, of like, come back when you have some real problems. I just think to dismiss someone based on their weight, whatever it is, whether, it's more than you think it should be, it's right where you think it should be, it's less than what you think it should be, really just kind of misses the mark and does all of us with PCOS a disservice, both in the present moment and, like you were saying, with emotional well-being and how we're feeling. But it really also does us a disservice when we're thinking about our long-term health and really the fact that we need to be acting now to prevent so many of these other things later in our life.
To me, this is one of the most important themes with nutrition with PCOS. You see a lot of, again, online things saying, oh, well, I'm using this diet and it works for me and I've lost so much weight, or, don't be afraid of restriction and don't listen to these people who tell you can eat whatever you want. So is there one best diet or care plan for PCOS patients, or does it need to be an individualized process?
Yes, I was going to say, I think you know the answer that I'm going to give you.
Yes,
I love this question and I love this topic because I too am in a lot of these, PCOS, Facebook groups and online forums and things like that. And it just, I'm not the person that's going to go, argue with somebody in the comments, but it really breaks my heart when I see some of these things. And again, kind of a theme and thing we've talked about a couple of times is this idea of longevity and sustainability. And is this, diet or nutrition plan or lifestyle change, whatever you want to call it, is it truly something that you can do for the rest of your life? Are you really never going to eat a piece of birthday cake again? Are you really never going to go out for ice cream with your kids or your nieces and nephews? Whatever it is. And something that I love to push back on my clients on, or even just, even if they're not my clients, I talk to a lot of people on social media that say, oh, keto worked really well for me. Intermittent fasting worked for me. I cut out gluten and dairy, Weight Watchers, whatever it is. Let's think about the amount of times that you've gone on these supposed plans, and let's really call into question what success looks like. Because if they were truly successful, would you need to be starting them over every month or every year or whatever it is? I have people that say to me like, oh, well, Weight Watchers, we'll use that as an example. Oh, well, Weight Watchers worked really well for me in the past. And so, I really love to kind of pick at that and pick it apart and say, well, what was it about it that, made you step away from it? And, if it was really, truly successful, don't you think you would have been able to kind of continue that? And it really, opens our eyes. And, I believe in body autonomy. And if somebody, wants to go do XYZ diet, it's their decision, but I want them to really be fully informed and really kind of question what success looks like. And could I see success in a way that I'm still enjoying food and eating the foods that I want to be eating while also improving my PCOS symptoms?
Oh my gosh, so important. Thank you, thank you, thank you for breaking that down. Because with you, I see so much online, and it's almost like nails down the chalkboard sometimes. But you have to respect people's space while trying to educate in the same in the same breath. So it's a fine line.
One of those things of like, it's all great and dandy 2 weeks in, but what happens, when the holidays roll around, or, you're going to a summer barbecue or something like that. And, are you really going to be the one passing up on all your favorite foods?
Yeah, no, I know I'm not, but
Me neither.
So also, talking a little bit more about your plan and what you do with your clients, I know that we receive a lot of nutrients from foods, but for some patients, especially with vitamin deficiency, supplementation may be necessary. So what can be the benefits of supplementation with PCOS?
Yeah. So as a dietitian, I definitely take a foods first approach, meaning I want us to get our nutrients from food. That is, what my education and training is in. And that is obviously going to be my first line of defense. But we know that with PCOS, we tend to be deficient in a lot of vitamins and minerals. We also know that with the very large number of people that have been on birth control pills, we know that the birth control pill can deplete some of our nutrient stores. And then sometimes, just kind of based on our diet and our preferences, those supplements are just kind of necessary. One example that I give, I actually do not like fish. I am starting to eat a little bit more, and especially as we're talking about heart health, I know how important it is. So I choose to supplement with fish oil. So obviously, if it was up to me, I would be eating lots of fish, but that's just not the reality. It's not my food preference. And I'm not going to force myself to eat something that I don't like. I think the other thing is the research has really shown us that the therapeutic amount of omega-3 for PCOS is pretty high. And the vast majority of Americans just don't eat that much fish to meet that threshold to really see that benefit. And it is actually a really big benefit from those omega-3s. And so I think supplementation is a really great way to do just that, to supplement our diet, to say maybe you're eating fish, 2 or 3 times a week. Maybe we can kind of cut back on the amount. Somebody might not need as much as I do, not really eating any at all. So that's where that individualized custom approach is really important, so that we can take into consideration, what are you eating and what do we need to supplement? So again, I think it's so, so important to customize that. To your point about, these online forums, I think that's another place where it's like, go buy this supplement and try this. This really worked for me. And it's like, oh man, that's a really great way to flush a lot of money down the toilet, that I think working with a professional that can help you is also just a great way to kind of save money in the long run, because you're going to be able to find the most effective supplement that's going to give you the best results as quickly as possible, and hopefully be able to only take them for a short amount of time, hopefully not be taking them forever. All that to say, they can be a really, really helpful tool for a lot of us.
I love that. So, and you gave me the perfect segue in what you were just saying, talking about omega-3s and heart health, because since we are here as part of the 10th anniversary of Heart for PCOS, I wanted to talk a little bit more about nutrition, PCOS, and cardiovascular disease. So, how can nutrition play a role in minimizing issues in PCOS that can ultimately be risk factors for cardiovascular disease, like high cholesterol, insulin resistance, and inflammation?
Yeah, so nutrition has such a big impact on all of those things. There's so many kind of small tweaks we can make to our nutrition that can have a really big impact on everything you just listed. And really, I think this is a great place where we can focus on kind of moving away from that diet mentality. And this
Yeah,
is a great place to think about what can we add to our diet that would be beneficial, because that is so much of it. What is that kind of the center of nutrition for good heart health? So again, thinking about omega-3s, eating lots of fish, nuts, seeds, things like that, adding in lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of good fiber, thinking about with inflammation, making sure that our gut is nice and healthy. Again, making sure we're getting plenty of fiber there, making sure we're getting good antioxidants. And then with the dyslipidemia, so that high cholesterol, there's actually a lot of really, really good studies that omega-3s can have almost as good of an impact as some of those cholesterol lowering medications. And so again, I think, doctors are trained in medicine, so I wouldn't expect them, that's kind of their first line of defense. And I think there is always a time and place for that. We're really lucky to live in a world with modern medicine where we've got access to so many wonderful drugs and medication that can really help. But, I think something that's important is to remember that there are other ways to have a really beneficial effect on our PCOS, our heart, our health in general, without having to kind of, constantly be going back and forth to the drugstore to pick up different medications.
absolutely. So, I wanted to ask you, I know fish is not your favorite thing. We've established that. So what are some PCOS friendly heart health meal options that you might recommend or might be a consideration for some people?
Yeah. So one of the things that I always work with my clients on is balancing their meals. So we always want to make sure we're getting plenty of protein. So thinking about beef, poultry, fish, as well as plant-based proteins. So thinking about ways that we can add fiber to our plate. So one of my favorite things to remind my clients, we hear a lot about like cutting out gluten out of our diet for PCOS. And really what I like to focus on is, instead of thinking about cutting out gluten, thinking about what can we add. So making sure we're getting those good whole grains, we're getting, legumes, we're getting fruits and vegetables. There's lots of ways to add really good foods to our diet to have a really great impact on our health, making sure we've got lots of color on our plate, all of that good stuff. So the sky is the limit in terms of what to eat for our heart health. And I think if someone is out there struggling, I think it's a perfect opportunity to reach out to a registered dietitian, because our specialty really is, I always think it's so interesting. I had somebody ask me one time, say, was not somebody with PCOS, but I've got these, 3 or 4 health conditions and or diseases going on. And, there's all this information out there on the internet, and I need to figure out how to kind of combine all of that to address these different things. Is that something that a dietitian could help me with? And I'm like, yes, that is our bread and butter. That is exactly what we do, is look at you, the individual, what is going on, and come up with a plan that is going to work for you. So like I said, if that is something that someone is struggling with, I would encourage them to reach out to a registered dietitian to come up with a plan that is going to work for them in their life.
Absolutely. So I have one final question for you, and I ask this of everyone because to me this is like the whole reason why I do what I do. So why do you feel PCOS awareness and advocacy and joining campaigns like Heart for PCOS are so important?
Oh my gosh. How much time do you have? I'm just kidding. I think there is just so little information out there, and people are so frustrated by it. And The fact of the matter is there is, while we talk about the lack of information and the lack of research that is out there is some really good information out there about PCOS too. So putting it out there to empower people to make decisions for themselves about their health and their life is just a lot of fun. There's nothing I love more than breaking down a nutrition myth with somebody that, they have held as the truth for so long, and kind of breaking it down and allowing them to break through that barrier. So that, and in addition, just like you are doing this whole month, really empowering people to take control of their health now, and understanding that they're not, doomed or destined for these different conditions that are at greater risk for. There really is a lot that we can do, and seeking out help can really be helpful in terms of not only our physical health, but also our mental and emotional health as well.
Absolutely, because according to the American Heart Association, 80% of cardiovascular disease is preventable. And that starts with education. And that's why we do this every year, to educate, because you know what? I want to keep the hearts of the community beating strong. So
Yes.
let's do it. And Ellison, I would love if you could share with everyone how they can connect with you through social media, website, practice, because I'm sold. I already follow you, and I think everybody else should. So how do they find you?
Well, thank you. My practice is called Happy Hormones Dietitian. So they can find me online at happyhormonesdietitian.com. So that's happy hormones with an S. And on Instagram at Happy Hormones Dietitian. So if somebody's looking to get in touch with me, they can always send me a DM, get in touch with me through my website, whatever is easiest. I love connecting with others with PCOS, even if it's just to say hi and know another kind of friendly face of somebody, that understands the struggle that we're going through.
So important. And thank you so much. I mean, genuinely, it means the world to me that you spent, this little bit of time with me to talk with everyone and explain, different philosophies that are around nutrition, and, dispelling some of the myths, because we know there are a lot of them out there.
Yes.
So I really appreciate that. And I will, everyone, be sharing all of her links and information so you can connect with her along with this interview today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, for listening in. Ellison, for the phenomenal information that you shared for us. And I'm wishing everyone a very happy afternoon. And do not forget to follow Heart4PCOS throughout the month of February for more events, fundraisers, speakers, and our Teal to Red campaign that recognizes the largest at-risk group of women for cardiovascular disease, women with PCOS. Have a great day, everyone.